The red alert klaxon that shattered the silence of Missile Alert Facility Delta 09 at 0347 hours wasn't scheduled for any training exercise. Launch Control Officer Captain Sarah Mitchell had been monitoring nuclear missile systems for 18 months, but when her console displayed DEFCON 1, Launch Authentication Required, she realized someone was trying to trigger World War III with stolen command codes. 50 feet beneath the prairie grasslands of North Dakota, Captain Mitchell sat in the Launch Control Center that housed some of America's most devastating weapons. 10 Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles, each capable of delivering nuclear warheads across thousands of miles with precision that could end civilizations. The underground facility was designed to survive direct nuclear attack while maintaining the capability to retaliate, ensuring that America's nuclear deterrent remained credible even under the most extreme circumstances. At 28, Sarah had volunteered for nuclear missile duty, knowing it carried responsibilities that few military officers would ever face. As a missile launch officer, she was one of the select few entrusted with the power to initiate nuclear warfare if lawfully ordered by the President of the United States. The duty required absolute reliability, perfect adherence to protocol, and the psychological strength to potentially end millions of lives if national survival demanded it. Her partner in the Launch Control Center was Captain James Wilson, a steady officer with 4 years of missile duty who served as her deputy missile combat crew commander. The two-person control system ensured that no single individual could launch nuclear weapons. Both officers had to simultaneously authenticate orders, verify codes, and turn their launch keys within seconds of each other for the missiles to fire. The facility operated under strict protocols designed to prevent unauthorized launches while ensuring rapid response to legitimate orders. Every communication was logged, every procedure was witnessed, and every decision was subject to multiple verification systems. The officers lived with the knowledge that their primary job was to sit quietly in an underground bunker, hoping they would never be called upon to perform the mission they trained for daily. The Launch Control Center itself was a marvel of 1960s military engineering, designed to survive direct nuclear attack through massive concrete construction and sophisticated shock absorption systems. The underground capsule could withstand overpressures that would destroy surface structures, maintaining communication capabilities and life support for weeks if necessary. Banks of analog and digital systems provided redundant control over the missile field, while secure communication links connected the facility to Strategic Air Command Headquarters and the National Command Authority. Sarah had been on duty for 16 hours, midway through a standard 24-hour alert tour that kept missile officers underground and isolated from outside contact, while maintaining readiness to execute nuclear war plans if ordered. The routine was methodical. Monitor communication systems, conduct periodic system checks, maintain readiness logs, and wait. The isolation was deliberate and necessary. During alert tours, launch officers were cut off from family, friends, and outside news sources that might influence their judgment during a crisis. They lived in a sterile environment where duty and protocol superseded personal considerations, ensuring that if nuclear weapons had to be used, the decision would be executed by officers focused entirely on their military responsibilities rather than emotional. Tonight had been quieter than usual. The overnight hours typically passed slowly, marked only by hourly status reports and the quiet hum of electronic equipment that connected their facility to command authorities thousands of miles away. Sarah had been reviewing maintenance schedules when the alert klaxon exploded through the facility's communication system. The sound was unmistakable, the specific tone reserved for genuine nuclear alerts that demanded immediate response from launch crews. Sarah's training kicked in instantly as she turned to her console, expecting to see the routine emergency exercise messages that periodically tested crew response times and procedural compliance. Instead, her screen displayed authentication codes she'd never seen before. "Wilson, are you seeing this?" Sarah called to her partner, who was already moving to his launch control station. "Affirmative. I'm showing DEFCON 1 status and launch authentication required." Wilson's voice carried the controlled tension of an officer processing information that could mean global nuclear war had begun. Authenticating with emergency action message procedures. Sarah began the verification process that would determine whether the launch order was legitimate. Every authentic nuclear launch order contained specific authentication codes that proved it originated from the president and had been transmitted through uncompromised command channels. The codes changed regularly and were known only to authorized personnel with appropriate security clearances. But as Sarah cross-referenced the codes against her authentication materials, she discovered something that made her blood freeze. The numbers didn't match any sequence in her official codebooks. "Wilson, I'm not getting positive authentication on these codes. Are you confirming valid sequence?" Captain Wilson worked methodically through his own verification procedures, comparing the incoming message against multiple authentication sources. The pause before his response told Sarah everything she needed to know. Negative authentication, Mitchell. These codes aren't in our current books. The implications were terrifying. Either they were receiving a nuclear launch order through compromised channels, or someone with access to nuclear command systems was attempting to initiate unauthorized missile launches using stolen or fabricated authentication codes. Sarah activated the direct communication line to Strategic Air Command, the higher headquarters responsible for nuclear operations. SAC Command, this is Delta 09. We are receiving launch authentication codes that do not verify through standard procedures. Request immediate clarification. The response was delayed longer than normal, and when it came, the voice was unfamiliar. Delta 09 authentication codes are valid. Proceed with launch preparation procedures. Sarah exchanged glances with Wilson. In 18 months of missile duty, she'd never heard that voice on SAC communications, and nuclear protocols required specific verbal authentication from known command personnel. SAC Command, request voice authentication from duty officer using current challenge response codes. Another pause, then, Delta 09, you are directed to proceed with launch preparation immediately. Authentication is confirmed at this level. Sarah made the decision that would either save millions of lives or end her military career. Wilson, I'm declaring Red Key Protocol. Something is not right with this launch order. Red Key Protocol was the emergency procedure for situations where launch crew officers suspected their nuclear command systems had been compromised by hostile actors. It required immediate notification of security forces, isolation of the facility from external communications, and detailed investigation before any weapons could be fired. Concur, Mitchell. I'm not comfortable with the authentication sequence either. Sarah activated the facility's internal security systems and switched to a backup communication channel that bypassed normal SAC networks. Security forces, this is Delta 09 Launch Control. We are declaring Red Key Protocol. Possible compromise of nuclear command systems. Request immediate response. Within minutes, armed security teams were surrounding the facility while cybersecurity specialists began analyzing the communication systems that had delivered the suspicious launch order. What they discovered confirmed Sarah's worst fears. Sophisticated hackers had penetrated nuclear command networks and were attempting to trigger missile launches using forged authentication codes. The attack was traced to foreign actors who had spent months infiltrating American military networks, gathering intelligence on nuclear command procedures, and developing the capability to mimic legitimate launch orders. Their goal was to trick American missile officers into launching nuclear weapons against allies, creating global chaos while appearing to be authorized American attacks. If Sarah had followed the orders without questioning their authenticity, 10 Minuteman III missiles would have launched toward targets that would have triggered immediate nuclear retaliation against the United States. The attack would have appeared to be an American first strike, potentially starting World War III through deception rather than direct assault. As security forces secured the facility and cyber specialists worked to repair the compromised command systems, Sarah reflected on the split-second decision that had prevented global catastrophe. Her training had taught her to follow lawful orders without hesitation, but her instincts had warned her that something was fundamentally wrong with the launch authentication. Mitchell, Wilson said as they watched security teams sweep the facility for additional threats. How did you know the orders were fake? Sarah considered the question that would be investigated by multiple agencies over the coming weeks. The authentication codes were technically correct, but felt wrong somehow. Too perfect, too clean. Real emergency orders usually show some signs of the chaos that would be happening at higher headquarters during a genuine nuclear crisis. The investigation that followed revealed the depth of the cyber attack and led to enhanced security protocols for nuclear command systems. The hackers had demonstrated sophisticated understanding of American nuclear procedures, suggesting months of intelligence gathering and system penetration that went undetected by traditional security measures. Their ability to generate authentication codes that appeared legitimate indicated access to classified information that should have been impossible to obtain. The attack represented a new form of warfare, using America's own nuclear weapons as instruments of deception rather than attempting to build rival arsenals. By triggering unauthorized launches that would appear to be legitimate American attacks, hostile actors could potentially start nuclear wars while maintaining plausible deniability about their own involvement. But Sarah understood that the most important defense against nuclear terrorism wasn't technological. It was the judgment and integrity of the officers trusted with humanity's most devastating weapons. No computer system could replace the human element in nuclear command and control, the ability to recognize when something didn't feel right even when all technical indicators appeared normal. Captain Sarah Mitchell had started her shift expecting another routine night of quiet readiness. Instead, she had prevented nuclear war through careful attention to detail and the courage to question orders that didn't feel right, even when those orders appeared to be legitimate and came from proper authority. Her decision to implement Red Key Protocol had saved not just American lives, but potentially prevented global nuclear exchange that could have ended human civilization. The weight of that responsibility would stay with her for the rest of her career. The knowledge that a single moment of doubt and professional instinct had stood between peace and unthinkable destruction. Red Key Protocol had been successfully executed, and the world had been saved by an officer who understood that sometimes the most important military decision is knowing when not to follow orders. In the depths of a North Dakota missile silo, one woman's instincts had prevented the end of civilization as we know it.